everybody, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Self-Worth Saturday. So hopefully if you have managed to make it, you are down in the live chat and we are all going to chat and say hello to each other. I really like the ability to premiere videos like this, but not to worry if you are watching this after it initially aired. It's fine. You won't miss anything. Well, you'll miss the live chat, but that's okay. I'm being super awkward because I've had a long week, y'all, and I had a run-in with this topic literally a couple hours ago. So I have a lot to say. But before I get into that, I should tell you what the topic is. It's in the description box, of course, but it is people pleasing this week. So this is a topic that I know a lot about, personal experience and all, y'all, so I'm probably gonna have a lot to say both now and in the live chat. But firstly, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this series, particularly if you're new here, and so that you know what to expect each week when you tune in. So in Self-Worth Saturday, I'm going to be doing a bit of a ramble, telling you my thoughts and experiences about the topic of the week. I'm going to share some journal prompts with you so that you have some ways to dive deeper into this topic for yourself in your own work, in whatever way that makes sense to you. But I have always found journaling to be an incredibly powerful tool for self-exploration, and so I just want to give you some jumping off points. So I'll create some journal prompts for you to explore for each weekly topic. Once I've shared some journal prompts, I'll usually give you some sort of call to action, a weekly challenge, something you can do to stretch in the direction towards self-worth related to that weekly topic. And I always will share with you an oracle card reading at the very end just to sort of wrap things up nicely and give us some food for thought. So don't forget, if you have a topic you want me to cover for Self-Worth Saturday, you are always welcome to leave a comment down below, send me an email at tarotwithlisa@gmail.com, or you can join the Supportive Tarot Facebook group and you can suggest a topic in there. I sometimes hold polls with some of the topics I'm planning for, to see which one people want me to cover next, that sort of thing, and I've been getting some ideas through that group as well. So if you like this kind of content, if you like this video, if you're enjoying this weekly series, don't forget to hit the like button down below because that stuff helps my channel. It also gives me great feedback about the stuff that you guys are enjoying the most. And subscribe if you are new here so that you can tune in every single week, because I think this is a really exciting bit of chatting we get to do about these topics. I also will most weeks have a live chat following the topics so that we can all have a bit of a coffee or a beverage or a snack or whatever and just hang out and chit chat about the weekly topics. And I really enjoy doing that. It's a way for us to kind of dive deeper. Let's get into people pleasing. Oh wait, actually, before we get into people pleasing, let's talk about last week. So last week's topic was accepting compliments. And I challenged everybody to, when you feel actually moved to do so, to compliment a couple people in your life, maybe even just the same person over and over again, whatever works, but pay attention to how they respond to the compliment. And maybe think about that. Like, did they respond in a good way and how did that make you feel? Excuse me, did they respond in a bad way and how did that make you feel? Did they reject the compliment or did they accept it? That sort of stuff. So I'll tell you what happened with me. None of you will be surprised. But I complimented Peggy. She's the person I spend the most time with, so it makes sense, right? Here's what I noticed. Pretty much every time I compliment Peggy, and you guys might have actually seen this in lives. In fact, I might have commented on it in lives. But if I compliment Peggy, you know, hey honey, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you. You're really amazing, or you're really nice, or I don't know. I'm being awkward, but I would say a compliment. And she would come back, she'd go, I know, I'm amazing. And she's kind of semi-joking, but she's also kind of semi-serious, and like, that's a really good model of being good at accepting compliments, I think. So I really noticed that a lot this week. It made me smile. It made me happy. And I have to say, it kind of feels good, even though it's like super like kind of hilariously ego-y in the cute way. It also does feel good to give somebody a compliment and then they accept it. And you're like, oh, okay, I did a thing and it was good. I'd be curious to know how it went for you this week, so share that in the chat box if you're on live right now, or leave a comment down below and let me know how did it go for you this last week if you're comfortable sharing. And if you're not, no sweat, no worries. But I feel like I did okay with this, and I feel like I've been more conscious of it since bringing this up as a weekly topic, and I just, in general, I've just been feeling better about accepting compliments with it being sort of at the forefront of my mind. That's last week. Let's talk about this week. People pleasing. Oh boy. So, let's define it, basically. This one, oh, first of all, this idea is the one that ranked the highest in the Facebook poll. So on the Facebook group Supportive Tarot. So that is why we're doing this one this week. But let's talk about what people pleasing looks like. On the surface, we're probably all pretty familiar with it. It's when you sort of prioritize everybody else's needs and wants and desires before your own. But there's also some really specific ways this can show up, and I'm familiar with all of these, so like no judgment. All of these. First of all, you act like the people in your life. You morph your identity into theirs. Now, I used to be really bad for this. Like my last relationship, no, my longest relationship prior to my current marriage, especially in the first few years, I literally turned into that person. Like I talked like them, I used their words, I listened to their music, I got interested in their hobbies. Literally everything that person was into, I got into. It doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy myself, but I certainly feel like I morphed myself into who I thought that they would love. And yeah. Also, I've done that a lot in the past with friends, with social groups, where I just would let my identity become them. And I'm sure that I did that out of a fear of not being accepted by who I was, and also an inability to even identify who I am, because sometimes that's hard, especially if you're raised in an environment where individuality and creative expression are not exactly promoted. So there's that. Number 2, you might have difficulty sharing an opinion confidently and without explanation. You may also have difficulty even discerning what your opinion actually is. So think about the last debate you had, and if it was with somebody that you care about and or respect, did you find it difficult to have a dissenting opinion? If you did, was it a knee-jerk response to automatically disagree so that you could have your own opinion? Did you think about it and form your own opinion first, or did you automatically agree with that person because you respect them and you like them? Things to think about, because I'll tell you right now, I spent a lot of time automatically agreeing with almost everybody in my life because that was the path of least resistance, and I kind of liked that. And it wasn't a conscious thing. It's just a habit that I got into over the years. Now, sometimes, and Peggy will be the first to tell you this, sometimes I actually sort of tip the other direction and almost disagree right away to prove I have my own opinion, even though I haven't thought about it. So that's kind of the flip side of the same issue. Something to think about, right? Another thing that can happen if you're a people pleaser, or if you have a tendency to be people pleasing, is you have difficulty saying no. And you especially have difficulty saying no without a valid excuse. In other words, you don't want to go to a particular event. Maybe you just feel like being at home. Maybe you just don't feel comfortable hanging out with all of the other people going to that particular event, even though there's 1 or 2 people you do like. But easier to say you're sick or already booked or whatever than to just say, no, I don't feel like it. So this is a really common thing that a lot of people do. You don't have to be in some toxic, super dysfunctional area of people pleasing to have people pleasing tendencies. And that's kind of what we're trying to talk about. It's just, you know, you might be a big time people pleaser, or you might only people please some of the time. But usually people pleasing is rooted in fear. It is fear of not being accepted as you are, fear of not being loved as you are, fear of being rejected or left or abandoned in some way. These are common shared fears that a lot of us have, particularly those of us who have struggled in our lifetimes with self-worth in any way, which, let's be honest, is probably most of the population. Moving along. Number 4, you take other people's negative emotions personally, whether or not they're about you. Too real. So if Peggy so much as like acts annoyed at the TV or something, I'm immediately like, what did I do wrong? First reaction, what did I do wrong? It must be about me. What have I done to upset you? It is neurotic and annoying as hell to me that I do this. And I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better about letting other people have their negative emotions without immediately assuming that it's my fault somehow or that I have something to apologize for. But it is ingrained. It is deeply, deeply, deeply ingrained, to the point that my sister and I have like this running joke where we are constantly apologizing to each other for random crap. And we're like, we've got to stop doing this. So we're like trying to like hashtag sorry not sorry and like laugh at ourselves and notice it when we do it. But holy cow, man, do I apologize a lot. And you ever get in those like apologizing loops where you're like apologizing a lot and then you're apologizing for apologizing a lot and then somebody's pointing out that you're apologizing and you don't need to apologize, so you apologize some more? Yeah, That's what I'm talking about. It's really an easy loop to get into, but on a more serious note, there's also the piece where somebody has a negative emotion or something you perceive as negative. They maybe have a moment of frustration that maybe is just all them, and maybe they even recognize it's all them and has nothing to do with you, and they're just having a grumpy moment, and maybe if you wouldn't freak out about it, everything would be fine because they would have their moment and then they would move along. Sometimes people are just grumpy. I get just grumpy. But if somebody else gets just grumpy, it's immediate interrogation time. And I'm laughing, you guys, because this is something that is so common and normal, and yet when I catch myself doing this stuff, I often feel abnormal, freakish, broken. And I'm working nowadays on recognizing that these things are just human behavior sort of stuff. And if I can notice it, then I have more control and power over my ability to make better choices. If I can be aware that my tendency is to take everybody else's negative emotions personally, then I can set better parameters for myself. I can notice sometimes when I'm doing that and take a different path. So this is the kind of thing I kind of like to shed light on, shall we say. There's also a whole piece here about being fairly empathic, and I'm sure this will spur a big discussion afterwards in the live chat, and I hope it does, because being empathic means you tend to absorb other people's negative emotions, which adds a whole layer of complexity, and they're positive ones, you know, but I notice the negative ones more. But that adds a whole other layer of complexity to this idea that other people having negative emotions affects you personally, because sometimes it does. And it's not anybody's fault, but you're cranky because the person next to you is cranky, and you want a reason for that, because who doesn't? And that's a rabbit hole we could seriously go down. Another thing that's people-pleasing is you have a hard time admitting when your feelings are hurt or you're uncomfortable or unhappy with something somebody else has done, because the last thing somebody who is a people pleaser wants to do is make somebody else uncomfortable by pointing out that they made you uncomfortable. Catch 22. So now your feelings are hurt, or somebody has stepped on your toes or crossed one of your boundaries, and it's very difficult to bring that up without making yourself feel freaked out, anxious, nervous, upset. And so some of us will just let stuff slide a lot. In fact, some of us will let stuff slide way longer than we should, because we don't want to have that confrontation, or we're afraid of the confrontation, or we're afraid to just directly say, hey, that hurt my feelings. So we don't. And that whole thing about boundaries and how to stand up for yourself is going to have to be its own topic, because I could talk a long time about that. But let's just say that is one of the behaviors that sort of falls under this umbrella of being more people-pleasy. We don't want to make other people uncomfortable. We want other people around us to accept us, which means we want to always be happy, sunshiny, smiley, and stuff. Okay, maybe not sunshiny and smiley. That's sort of my version of people-pleasing, but everybody has their own. Yours might look a little different. Also, I talk a lot with my hands, so if I'm doing this kind of stuff, I'm very sorry. See, I'm apologizing again. I'm not sorry. It's just who I am. Take it or leave it. You can tell that I am like all up in this topic because I'm getting redder as I talk about it. Very personal. Oh, number 6. I've already covered this. You apologize all of the time, and then you apologize for apologizing. It was literally what I wrote down. That's kind of hilarious. But we've covered this now. Lots of apologizing. Definitely a people pleaser tendency. And finally, you avoid conflict at all costs. We've also already talked about that in and around these other topics. So there's a lot, and there's more than that. Those are just some of the tangible examples of how we might be people-pleasing in our lives. And I noticed that, at least in my own life, I tend to be a lot more people-pleasing with the people closest to me, who I am most afraid of losing. And so it is actually with those people that I consciously work hardest at having good boundaries, at speaking up when I'm uncomfortable, at telling them when I'm not doing well, or am concerned about something, at not holding stuff inside so that it bottles up and then comes out later in like a spew of dysfunctional crap, because I like to not do that to the people that I'm close to. And the people that I'm close to, I am the most likely to do that to. Do you know what I mean? So there's like this, not heavier, but there's definitely a bigger burden of responsibility. Yeah. There's a bigger burden of responsibility with the people closest in my life, because those are the people that I tend to slip into the fear of losing them the most. Which means I'm most likely to act like that with those people. Being repetitive, but hopefully you get the idea. So here's the thing. As to why it happens, there is a ton of wonderful resources that you can dive very deep on this topic, and I will put at least 1 or 2 links down below so you can do a little further reading on this in general through some reputable sources. That being said, in my case, and as is the case with most of the people I've talked to who have had people-pleasing tendencies, We have had typically a problematic parent, not necessarily a horrible bad parent, it doesn't have to be that, but you've had a parent who has maybe had a particular image that they wanted to present to the rest of the world, and an image that you were sort of tasked with upholding. That could be as simple as somebody who's very traditional and is like, no dirty laundry shared outside the family, and always mind your P's and Q's in public, to something much deeper and more dysfunctional than that. And I'll leave it at that. But just let's point out that a lot of us have been raised or socialized in environments where we were encouraged to uphold a particular image, and especially an image of somebody other than ourselves. And being given that responsibility, we were trained from an early age to think about how other people are perceived and how they feel and how they look before we think about ourselves, which creates this kind of weird burden of responsibility where we suddenly feel responsible for other people's emotions, other people's experiences, and we put all of that weight on ourselves to do all of that. And none of that really should have been our job. It's a common thing, though. This doesn't just appear in like the worstest. This doesn't just appear in the worst of the worst situations. It appears in lots of different situations and in lots of different contexts. But many of us were socialized in such a way. That's just a commonality that I have personally found in my own experience. It may not be true for you or for everybody. In my case, both of my parents had self-worth and self-image issues to a certain extent. Both of them had issues around seeing themselves as people of value for different reasons. And so my models growing up were definitely not ones that modeled a positive sense of self-worth and self-value. So speaking from my me place, I can tell you that when you are raised with people who are constantly down on themselves, you are kind of unintentionally trained to constantly be lifting them back up. And as a result, you sort of fail to form your own identity. You don't really think about what your opinions are. You think about what will make the people in your life feel better. And that was at least my experience. So learning to actually identify what I think, what I feel, or what I want was really weird. And it wasn't something that really started for me until I was in my mid to late 20s. Really didn't start full on until 30 plus. Your experience might be different. Maybe somebody you know's experience might be different, but that was sort of where I came from. So for me, a lot of this stuff I didn't even start to learn until I was well into my adulthood. So for me, because of that particular environment, I at least became over-focused on watching and sort of, let me add a different layer here, because I'm kind of sugarcoating this a little bit. In the particular environment that I was raised in, it became a survival/coping mechanism to very carefully gauge the moods and desires of the adults in my life. And therefore, I became extremely sensitive to learn how to navigate those moods and sometimes impact those moods, which meant I learned at a young age to be even unconsciously, not intentionally, kind of unconsciously manipulative, in the sense that I would know a well-delivered compliment at a particular time could make my day go a whole lot better. And things like that really reinforce people-pleasing tendencies. This could be a temperamental parent in your life or a past relationship where you learned that the best way to get by was to constantly be focused on that other person's moods and managing them in some way. That is one way that this can manifest. So again, I'm speaking from my me place. This was my experience, and this is where I think that a lot of my stuff is rooted, but there's so many different ways that this could be sort of started for us and reinforced by the society that we live in. So definitely your mileage may vary. Always remember I'm speaking from my own personal experiences. So let me just see if there was something else I want to say. Oh yes, because a lot of us were raised in a way that reinforced this kind of stuff, it tends to sort of reinforce this idea that our feelings, opinions, and needs are less important or less valuable than the people in our lives or the people that we want to stick around. This stuff is all rooted in fear and in self-worth or lack of self-worth. When we have a strong sense of who we are and what we deserve, we're much better at advocating for our own needs and our own desires and forming our own opinions. But when we think that the people in our lives are only with us or near us because of how we make them feel, then we become invested in always managing how they're feeling and thinking of them before us, to the point where we can actually become oddly self-focused. Whole rabbit hole there too. This is a big topic. I'm trying to keep it under half an hour. Let's see how I do. So that being said, let's talk about what to do about it. Number one, as with everything else, the first step in making any movement or change in your own life and your own habits and tendencies is to notice it. Try to be aware when you're doing this behavior and just pay attention. Even if all you do is do the exact same thing, but you notice it, you journal about it, you start to pay attention. That is the most powerful thing you can do towards your own personal growth in any area of your life. Noticing, watching, being aware, letting the information come to you. That's the biggest step. Number 2, start to get to know yourself. If you can, when asked a question, at least start to think about what you want, even if you aren't able to verbalize it yet. If somebody asks you what you want for dinner, and you immediately knee-jerk with what do you want for dinner? You're not thinking about it. Now, you can think about it and still say, I don't know, what do you want for dinner? But if you start to think about it, you'll start to realize that you have preferences you didn't even know you had. You have days when you just really want the damn tacos, and you don't know how to say that, so you're going to end up having pizza, and that's fine. But if you start to notice that you're craving tacos, then maybe the next time, or the time after that you're asked what you want for dinner, you're going to speak up and say you want some damn tacos. Maybe I want tacos. Tacos keeps coming up. Last week we did Self-Care Saturday and we went for Taco Bell after. Just saying. Thirdly, most importantly, practice saying no. That is the hardest, and I could probably make an entire video about just this one topic, practice saying no. Even if you explain it, even if you have to justify it, practice saying no. Notice how often you say no or how not often you say no. Practice saying no. Practice saying no. I can't say it enough. So important. Okay, here's your journal prompts. This is a big one, and it might take a little bit of time, but if you're willing to dive into it, I think it could be really interesting. Make a list of about 20 of your favorite things. Just think of 20 things you really like. Could be food, could be music, could be hobbies, could be anything. Anything goes. 20 things that you like. Step number 2, for each of these 20 things, even if you only do this for 5 things, I like 20. 20 is a good number. Do 5. That's cool too. But for each one, write just a little bit for yourself about why they're your favorite thing. Why do you like them? Do you remember why you started liking that thing? When did it first catch your attention? That sort of thing. See if you can identify if these are likes that you like for you, or are they likes that you maybe like because somebody else likes. And there's no wrong answer here. It's not like it's bad to like stuff other people like, but it's interesting, it's information, it's a way to dive in. And let's think about our challenge of the week, and I'm going to shuffle a card from the Messenger Cards by Sandra Kuntz for us. So this week's challenge. Challenge A, and you can choose your own adventure, so pick A or B. Option A, say no one time this week because you mean it and without explaining yourself. Just one no that you mean, just no, and see what happens. Just one no. If that seems too hard, or if it's just not your jam, or you're already good at that, try option B, which is when you're asked what you want this week, whether it's what do you want for dinner, what do you want to do, think about the question. Uh-oh, I just dropped a card. Think about the question, think about what you actually want, and say it without apologizing for it, without trying to get the other person to tell you what they'd rather do or eat. Try to just say your opinion. And I'm laughing right now, and we will talk about this in the live chat, but I totally had a moment like this tonight while I'm recording this with Peggy when she asked me what I wanted for dinner. So it's super relevant. And sometimes it's super hard, but that's our challenge this week. And let's see what our oracle card is. The Messenger. What number are you? 26. My throat is going a little dry. Each of us has our own unique message of healing that we can sing out. This is our individual brand of love and comes from the very center of our souls. Through words, actions, non-actions, intentions, singing, dancing, or whatever calls you, you can bring your message out for the benefit of everyone. Each of us has a different message or vibration, and when we allow our authentic self to come through, we are ringing out our message loud and clear. The raven has many voices in the physical realm and is the symbol, and is the symbol of the infinite divine voice of the universe. The white raven also symbolizes creation in its purest form of light from the void where all is created. The raven is the messenger from this place of pure potential, which is ours for the taking. Your message comes from your higher self, and if you listen, it will have a name and a purpose. Your unique message is vital for the healing of our planet, so deliver your message with divine clarity and share your vision. And with that, just one last reminder, remember to say as often as you possibly can to yourself, I am worthy and I am unafraid. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.